Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Haunt of Love and Lies. Episode 11. Chapter 95. Killian's point of view. I mind-linked Rhiannon and she informed me Sheila had just returned to her chamber. I tossed aside the papers in my hands on the wooden table and pulled up from my chair. I gated to the door and headed straight for Sheila's chamber, which was at the right wing of the castle. I was there in no time. I placed my hand on the doorknob, pulling it open. Immediately, Sheila's sweet scent invaded my nostrils and my deep amber crystals fell on her. I could hear Riker stir in excitement at the back of my head. She was standing in front of the mirror, next to her dressing table. Her beautiful pristine body was covered with a white silken robe, and her hair was damp, sticking to her face as lines of water rushed down her body. I inhaled deeply as Sheila's blue eyes met mine from the mirror. She paused briefly, her gaze holding mine as I strode over to where she was. I've missed you," I whispered in a low tone for her ears alone. From the mirror, I could see her lips stretch into a sweet smile, and her soft hands pulled up to mine. "Yeah, me too." The sound of her voice and her words caused a grin to appear on my face. It made me elated to know she also missed me as much as I did. The last few days have been hell for me, not being able to have her always next to me like before. It was only during these kinds of short moments I could steal some time and be with her. Sheila has been spending most of her mornings and afternoons with the witches in the witches' quarters. And during the evenings she's always with the warriors, training. The only time I get to spend some time with my maid is at the peak of midnight when we are training. I could feel the electrifying sparks that ran through my entire body, sending shivers of pleasurable sensation around my body. I had lost all my sanity now, and I just wanted to make sweet love to her. But Sheila stopped me, pulling her lips away from mine. Her forehead rested against mine, and we were both panting. "Killian, what?" I replied out of breath. "We should stop now, we have a celebration to get to, remember," she muttered, and I moaned again as her soft breath fanned my lips. I groaned internally. I didn't forget about the feast tonight, certainly, everyone could wait for us, I said, pecking her lips continuously, attempting to seduce her to the bed. "They could, but we should be there on time. Remember, the feast is being thrown by everyone in the pack for us," she reminded, and Riker groaned frustratingly at the back of my head. "Cancel the feast, Killian," Riker growled, so eager to have Sheila in our bed. And I was with him on that. Before I could speak, Sheila furrowed her brows, and her slender hands cupped my face. "You and Riker better not get stupid ideas like canceling the feast everyone worked hard to prepare for," she warned, bossily, making me smile. It's amusing how these past few days she always manages to know what I am thinking. For the first time, I think I agree with Riker on this one, I joked. "All right, Alpha, let's make a deal." Sheila leaned closer to my body so that I could feel her hardened. Her immediate action caused me to gasp, and she smiled, naughtily. "Let's attend the feast tonight, and after, I promise I am all yours," she said, winking. "All mine." I pecked her lips. She nodded, sealing my lips with a kiss. Reluctantly, I agreed. Sheila pulled out of my grasp, adjusting her robe. "Now, please, do me a favor and leave," so I can get dressed. As you wish, love, I kissed her one last time, before exiting her chamber. I headed to my chamber and showered. I got dressed for tonight's feast and went down. Some pack members were giving the finishing touches to the decorations in the grand hall. The place had begun to crowd with the guests from the pack. I searched around, and Sheila hasn't stepped out yet. My eyes swept around again, and I couldn't find Thea among the crowd. I had sent someone to her chamber to inform her of tonight's feast, since she hasn't stepped out of her chamber for days now. Ever since the night of the cleansing ritual when everyone discovered Sheila was the gifted one, Thea had locked herself up in her chamber. She refused to see anyone, including me. I could only imagine how she felt. I knew the sudden truth had really hurt her, and I couldn't help but feel guilty about all of this. Thea didn't deserve this. And no matter how hard I thought about it, I can't understand why I saw Thea in my dreams instead. That dream was the cause of this misunderstanding. I believed what Valerie had said, that someone had intentionally planted Thea in my dreams to lead the pack and me astray. It was the witch that had murdered Rowan. But the dream was a long time ago. I can't believe the witch has been disguised within us for that long. But the real question that made me restless was, why was he or she doing all this? What's the motive? I can't seem to understand. I do have many enemies among my kind, but having a witch against me was another different matter. Valerie suggested maybe this unknown witch was sent by someone who has a grudge against me, but deep down I feel that's not the case. Somehow, I feel this is personal. If that witch was sent by someone, it would have been easy to get rid of me with everything that they knew about the curse from a long time ago. But they are not after my life, at least not yet. They want me to suffer in the worst possible way, that's why they are after Sheila. I stopped in my track. I hated having such thoughts. I inhaled deeply, realizing I had subconsciously made my way to Thea's chamber, and I was standing right in front of her door. I knocked gently on the door, but there was no response. After a series of knocks there was still no response. I could hear her faint heartbeat from inside the chamber, but strangely, I could feel something was wrong. Instantly, I pulled open the door and the sight that greeted me made my blood turn cold. Killian's point of view. I pushed the door to Thea's chamber open. My eyes scanned around the room, dwelling on the figure that was positioned on the bed. It was Thea. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, she didn't even look my way. It was as though she was lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, she shook gently, her eyes pulled down to the sharp dagger in her hands, and she focused on it briefly, thinking deeply. My eyes widened in horror as Thea drew the dagger to the skin of her neck. My blood instantly turned cold. Thea! I yelled. Immediately, my legs moved with speed and I crossed the room, gating to the bed where Thea was sitting, holding a dagger to her neck. Before she could slit her throat, I gripped her wrist tightly. Thea, stop! My hold was firm, and my amber eyes glowered down at her. No, Killian, please, let me do this, she yelled in tears, and with my non-human strength, I yanked the dagger away from her grip, but unfortunately, its sharp blade slit my wrist, before landing harshly against the humid floor. My blood smeared my shirt and splattered on the floor. Killian, Thea yelled and was up from the bed immediately, her teary brown eyes holding so much worry and concern. Oh, my goddess, Killian, are you all right? Thea gripped a cloth and brought it to my wrist to stop the bleeding. She was trembling profusely. I am really sorry, I didn't want you to get hurt. I pulled away immediately. It's just a cut, Thea. It will heal, I muttered, calming her shaky nerves. Instantly, my anger returned, remembering what she was just about to do. What is wrong with you? I was burning with so much rage. I couldn't believe she was just about to kill herself. If I didn't come in at the moment I did, I cannot even begin to imagine what would happen to Thea. What were you about to do? My amber eyes were burning with so much rage. But instead of answering my questions, Thea broke down in tears. It was then I had a good look at her. She looked so pale, the skin around her eyes was strained and swollen from so much crying. Her lips were so dry and she looked like she hadn't been eating these past few days. Her fragile state made my heart ache badly. Thea looked completely terrible. She held onto her dress, still in tears and about to collapse on the floor, but I was quick to reach out to her. I wrapped my arms around her waist and pulled her to the bed. Thea held on to me tightly, burying her head in my shirt. Please, Killian, just let me kill myself, she sobbed. I can't think of any other way to put an end to this pain in my chest. Thea, don't say that, I began, but she cut me off abruptly. No, Killian, it's the truth. My life has no purpose anymore, she pulled her glassy brown eyes to mine, tugging onto my shirt. I am completely useless to you, Killian, I am good for nothing, and I know you don't want me around anymore. Just let me do one good thing for you, and free you of such a nuisance like me. Her words punctured my heart. I grabbed her face in my hands. I hated seeing her like this. All of this was my fault from the start. If I didn't have that misleading dream about Thea being the gifted one, none of these would have happened. Thea wouldn't be in this situation. Don't say such words. None of this is your fault, Thea. And believe me, I am really sorry for everything that happened between us. You don't deserve someone like me, I said, and she shook her head. That's complete nonsense, Killian. I deserve someone like you. Believe it or not, I was made for you, she muttered firmly. I shook my head, about to speak. I don't want her to get the wrong idea of things. But Thea stopped me. Forget it, Killian, I know you have chosen her. Even though I am not the one that'll free you and the pack from the curse, I am really happy that you have found the gifted one, the real one this time, and fate would have it. She's your fated mate, a lone tear rolled down from her eyes. I could see the sadness imprinted in her gaze. I hate to see you like this, Thea. Don't harm yourself all because of me. You have a mate out there just waiting to find you, I told her, and she smiled weakly. A mate? She tried chuckling but failed at an attempt. No one can take your place in my heart, Killian. I know my presence here is a problem to your relationship with Sheila, so, I will make you a promise, Killian. As soon as the curse is broken, I will leave this pack, but before then, please don't throw me out. I want to leave the pack knowing you are safe and the pack that welcomed me as their own is safe as well, she whispered in tears. I wiped the tears off her face. Regardless of everything that happened between Thea and me, I really didn't like the idea of her leaving. Not because I want her to stay, but because this pack is all Thea has since she has no family. Enough of that, human. It's best if she leaves. For Sheila's sake, Riker voiced in my head, retreating back to a corner of my mind. He was right though. Even though Sheila hasn't said a word yet, I know she does not like the idea of Thea remaining in the pack. The celebration has begun. Everyone has gathered for the feast, but I think you should rest instead. You don't look good, I said while helping her into the bed. I will send someone to bring dinner to you, and have this mess cleaned up. My eyes fell on the splatter of my blood that smeared the floor. But please, promise me that you will not attempt anything stupid. She held my stare briefly, before sighing. I promise. I walked to the door when Thea's voice sounded. Killian, I turned to her soft call. Thank you, I really mean it, she whispered. I gave a short nod and returned downstairs. Thea's point of view Killian, I called his name in the meekest, frail voice I could muster. He turned to me, his deep amber eyes holding pity for me. Thank you, I really mean it, I added, softly. Killian nodded gently, and I watched in satisfaction as guilt once again enveloped his depth. I loved seeing it in his gaze. I watched him as he exited my chamber and shut the door behind him. Immediately, I grabbed onto the sheets that covered me, pulling them away from my body. I jumped on the floor, wiping off the tear stains that smeared my face. I went to the dagger that was on the floor, stained with Killian's blood, and picked it up. A small sick smile covered my lips. I didn't know which was easier, getting Killian's blood on this dagger, or making him believe I tried to kill myself. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. I pulled it open and began to mutter subtle chants. My brown eyes moved from Killian's blood on the dagger to the spatters on the floor. As I kept chanting, his blood that stained the floor rose up in the air, and the little blood on the dagger also levitated in the air. I kept chanting, using my magic to pull Killian's blood into the wooden bowl that was on the table. Now I have the last piece of ingredients I needed for the spell I had to make tonight. Those leeches have no idea what I am capable of. She has no idea what's coming her way tonight. What on earth was she thinking? That she had won and I would be kicked out of the pack and be out of Killian's life. Well, that won't be happening anytime soon. I turned to the door and used my magic to shut it. I pulled out a chair next to the table at the end of my chamber, and I started preparing Killian's blood for the spell. I couldn't stop my evil smile from resurfacing. Everyone in the pack was preparing for tonight's feast. They have no idea what's coming after. Honestly, I couldn't wait to see the look on that tramp's face when I gain full control over Killian. No one will be able to save him from my spell, not the supposed gifted one, not the stupid witches from the witch's quarters, nor the moon goddess herself. No one will stop me. Killian's point of view. By the time I returned to the grand hall, the place was already basking with so many people from the pack, all dressed beautifully. Everyone was having fun. But I wasn't. At least not yet. I glanced around for my mate, but I couldn't find her. Ria and Brielle were already in the grand hall, but she was not with them. It was even odder she wasn't with Morgan, as I could see him from afar chatting in the midst of some warriors and pack members. Immediately, I mind-linked Ria, asking her about Sheila, and she told me they had come to the hall together, and she didn't know where she was. I sighed, disconnecting. I sniffed in the air and began to trail her scent. It led me outside into the darkness and the silver rays of the towering moon in the sky. From afar, my eyes caught in the beautiful figure of my mate, and a smile roved on my lips. And I took a step forward, instantly stopping in my tracks when my nose caught the scent of another with my mate. I recognized the scent and who it belonged to. It was the witch, Lorenzo. I couldn't stop the frown that fell on my features. What was he doing with my mate outside at such an hour when there was a celebration going on? What made me angry was that they were all alone. I felt seething jealousy rise within me, as my hands curled up in a ball. Riker was mad as well, and he felt the jealousy now stalking my bones, but he was more sane than I was. Breathe in, human. Breathe in, we really don't want to mess up, Riker sounded in my head and I found myself unconsciously inhaling the night's calm air. Now I was a little calm, but I could still feel the jealousy in my bones. It wasn't an emotion I could control. Riker was right though. We really didn't want to mess up. For someone who had a lover while having a mate, I had messed up badly already. And I didn't want to ruin the beautiful relationship Sheila and I was slowly growing. Still, I hated the closeness between those two, and it only became worse now that Sheila spends almost all her time at the witch's quarters. I shoved my hands into my leather pants and stalked closer to them. As I moved closer, I could hear little whispers between them. Relax, Sheila, and remember, you need to be calm. I enhanced my hearing and caught some few words said by Lorenzo before the whispers stopped and Sheila stiffened, her head turning to where I was. Lorenzo followed her gaze and his eyes calmly fell on me. Killian, she called, her lips forming a small smile that immediately drowns every raging thought I had a second ago. Lorenzo tilted his head a little. Alpha, he said, pulling his gaze to Sheila. Excuse me, I'll be right inside if you need me, he voiced to Sheila, before walking away. His last words immediately ignited the rage that I thought was gone. And what did he mean by if you need me? It was enraging. Sheila moved to me as Lorenzo faded out of sight. I didn't see you inside, I got worried, I said, wrapping my arms around her waist. The place suddenly felt suffocating, and I needed some air, she muttered gently, burying her face in the crook of my neck while she inhaled my scent. I held onto her firmly, taking her face in my hands so I could stare at her. Are you all right? I asked. Sheila's eyes locked with mine briefly, before pulling her gaze away. She nodded. I am fine, Killian, believe me, I am. Her words sounded convincing, but I don't know why deep down I felt strange. Like she wasn't telling me something. Like she was hiding something important from me. You know you can tell me anything, right? I said again, and she hesitated before nodding. And the strange feeling in my chest began growing. There was something my mate wasn't telling me. It sent a jolt of pain to my chest, and I felt an instant sadness envelope my heart just thinking that Lorenzo might have known what was wrong with my mate instead of me. Again, with the jealousy, Killian. Snap out of it. Riker's voice shook me instantly. He could feel my every emotion. I don't know how he manages to still keep a clear and calm head. I put my jealousy aside, wrapping her safely in my arms. If truly there was something she wasn't telling me, she had a reason for it. But what could it be? Could it have to do with Alpha Lucius? I knew she recently remembered memories from her childhood, and she's been having nightmares, always waking up either in tears or enraged from her sleep. Something was indeed wrong with my mate and I have no idea what it was. I didn't want to force her to tell me what was wrong, I would love it if she told me herself. I love you, Sheila, I said, leaning closer to her until my lips covered hers in a kiss. Before I could deepen the kiss, Sheila pulled away abruptly. She crippled her brows and took a sniff in the air. "Why do I smell Thea on you?" she asked, her eyes searching mine, but I couldn't see the rage in her blue tender depth. "Because I went to check up on her. It was a good thing I went precisely the time I did, otherwise, Thea would be dead right now," I told her and her brows crippled the more. "What do you mean?" I explained everything to her and the look on Sheila's face only grew worse. Sheila's point of view. I listened to every word that came from Killian's lips and I couldn't stop the rage that rose within me. I couldn't even hide it. I really don't understand Killian, I mean what was he thinking? Why can't he see she is only being pretentious? Even I could see through her lies and pretense, why can't he? Thea was a complete fake. Deep down I knew this and I have this feeling in my chest that she was not who she says she was. She was definitely not the weak and fragile woman Killian thinks she was. I wanted to tell all this to his face, but if I did I would only be seen as the maid who was still jealous and felt insecure about her mate's former lover. Instead of yelling and getting mad, I decided to breathe in calmly. Trying to calm emotions which seemed to always ignite chaos in my magic. I breathed in Killian's scent, pulling my eyes open. "You are right, Killian, Thea must be going through a lot, I completely understand her," I said. That was the truth though. With the way things were, I could say I was the only one that truly understood Thea. I could see the game she was trying to play. She wanted to wrap Killian around her fingers and take advantage of the guilt he felt toward her. Well, that would not happen, at least not while I am next to Killian. Killian pecked my lips, and I tried to smile while my thoughts didn't drift from Thea. "We should go back to the party, everyone must be wondering where we are," Killian said, and I nodded, kissing him deeply. We began to saunter back to the grand hall which was crowded with many people from the pack. Killian and I moved around and greeted some ranking old wolves of the pack that had retired and moved to the wolf village near the mountains within our territory. All through the party, I couldn't pull my thoughts from Thea. I had a bad feeling. And I couldn't concentrate as Killian's words about her supposed attempted suicide kept echoing in my head, troubling my soul. I hated this. I cursed internally at these worrisome feelings I had. "Yeah, me too," Adi huffed angrily. And I sighed furiously. I really tried to get Thea out of my thoughts, but I just couldn't, almost as if I could feel some sort of danger coming my way. I just couldn't ignore this any longer. I turned to Killian who was talking with some of the pack members. "I will be back soon," I whispered to him, but he could not hear me. I pecked his lips, moving out of the grand hall. Immediately, I walked through the doors, my legs moved quickly. I took a turn to the unfamiliar floors of the hallway in the castle that I have never been to before. Frankly, I didn't think I would ever stalk these floors, heading for Thea's chamber. But since she desperately wanted to end her life, I can't stop myself from wanting to do her a favor. It will give me great pleasure to end her life. Sheila's point of view. I halted right in front of Thea's chamber. I pulled my hands up in the air, instead of knocking. I grabbed the door handle but it was locked. I sighed impatiently, removing the black bracelet that was on my wrist. And with only a whisper, I heard the clicking of the door. I returned the bracelet to my wrist, and slowly, I stepped into Thea's chamber. My eyes scanned around the chamber but there was no sight of Thea, nor the splatter of Killian's blood on the floor. But from a far end, my eyes took in a small dagger that was on a table in a corner of the room. My brows furrowed as I stalked closer to the table. I was about to touch the dagger when Thea's voice sounded behind me. "And look who we have here." Her voice was so clear and her words so sharp, holding so much rage and irritation. I turned around and my blue eyes fell on her. A small smile found my lips as I regarded her from her head to her toes. I was right. She was only putting up an act in front of Killian. She definitely didn't look like someone that has lost the will to live. "My mate told me that you weren't doing fine, so, being your gracious and caring Luna, I decided to come and see you," I said, not moving from my spot. Thea's lips spread more into a smirk as she folded her hands against her chest. "I bet you would love it if I had died, right?" "Oh, yeah. Killian told me about the stunt you pulled," and hearing everything he said, I felt so sad that you realized he still cared about me. Thea mumbled with a smile. "No, sad that you didn't have the courage to send that dagger straight into your heart," I said, watching the smile on her face fade so quickly and her brown eyes burn with rage. She retracted her hands from her chest, allowing a sick smile to appear again on her lips. There was a short silence between us, and Thea was watching me. I could tell she was brewing some kind of insane thought in her head. Without saying a word, she walked to the door and locked it from the inside. Her brown eyes fell back on me. "Guess what, gifted one, you just made a terrible mistake of coming here." Her voice was cold and deathly. Far different from the usual one she normally uses. I felt a bang in my chest. It wasn't out of fear but from a certain realization that there was more to Thea than anyone knew. I studied her quietly, pressing my lips together. "No, Thea, as a matter of fact, you have made a terrible mistake locking that door," I whispered with a smile. "It's just you and I, there's no Killian here to put an act for, so tell me, what do you want?" Her brown eyes narrowed on me, shimmering with a dark glint. "Killian," she sounded. "Killian is all that I want," she added. I could tell the words that left her lips were her truth. But I knew Thea didn't love Killian. It was obvious from our last conversation in Killian's office the day the Firecrest pack attacked. She wanted something else from Killian. At first, I thought it was just power and my position that she has always wanted in the pack and Killian's life. But I am starting to doubt it all. Thea wanted something else, and it wasn't Killian's love. "Why are you so obsessed with Killian? He has found his mate, why don't you find yours?" I asked, and she chuckled lightly. "It's my turn to ask some questions, gifted one," she said, taking cautious steps closer to me. "I have been thinking hard about something, and it's driving me crazy. But still, I am curious, what is it that makes you so special that you cannot be harmed at all cost? The skin on my forehead was crippled in a frown at her words. Thea's eyes were looking at me intensely. What was she saying? Try coming close to Killian again, and you might just find out, Thea, I told her, flatly. You crazy? Thea pulled her hand in the air, about to strike me, but I gripped her hand, snatching the dagger on the table with my other hand. I pushed her against the wall, holding the dagger to her throat. I swear to the goddess, I am so tempted to send this dagger right into your chest. But I won't, at least not now, Thea. I want you to grab your things, leave Killian and this pack and go back to whatever deserted hole you crawled out from, or I swear to the moon goddess herself, I will kill you, and no one will be able to find your rotten corpse, not even Killian. I pushed the dagger to her skin, its sharp blade tearing her flesh as warm blood rushed from her neck. You will be the one whose rotten corpse Killian would never find, she whispered, smirking. You will see just what I am capable of, gifted one. Thea's eyes flashed with darkness, and her lips curled up into a smile. She pulled her hands up immediately, cupping my face. Her gaze on me was so intense that for a second, I thought something was about to happen. But it didn't. The smile on Thea's lips vanished as well, and the dark glint that blended with her brown gaze faded. She looked more shocked and confused than I was. What? She whispered to herself, cupping my face again. Why won't it work? She half yelled, while I was totally dumbstruck by her actions. But I didn't remove the dagger from her neck. Thea's eyes met mine. What did you just do? She yelled, about hitting me, but I pressed the dagger to her throat, reminding her life was in my hands. I didn't want to kill her just yet, but I still didn't trust myself not to if I felt my life was in danger. Thea yelled again, but she stopped moving. There was a certain emotion in her gaze that confused me. Fear. This was the first time I had seen that in her. Why was she suddenly scared of me? She didn't even flinch when I pulled a dagger to her throat, so what changed so suddenly? This is my final warning, Thea. Leave this pack, I said, moving away from her. I tossed the dagger in my hand on the floor. Thea's eyes on me never pulled away. It was as if she was staring at me, but wasn't staring at me. Like her thoughts were far away but her eyes were on me. I dusted my dress neatly, turning for the door. I just wanted to get away from her and the lunacy that existed within the corner walls of Thea's chamber before I was infected. I had reached the door when I felt movement behind me. Before I could turn around, the door pushed open, and my eyes fell on Morgan's. His eyes widened past me. He grabbed my arm and pulled me closer to his body just in time to evade the dagger that was flying at me. I turned around to see Thea's eyes with rage, having one hand on her neck, trying to stop the blood from rushing out. I wanted to charge at her, but Morgan stopped me, and he spared one last glance at Thea before pulling me out. Relax, Sheila. Don't stoop to her level, he held me, calming me down. I breathed in, relaxing my nerves. What were you doing in her chamber? He asked, raising a brow. I went to talk to her, I said to him, noticing the manner in which his green eyes narrowed on me. Fine, I went with the intent of murdering her. Morgan only sighed but didn't say anything. Then my eyes narrowed on him, before glancing back at Thea's door. Why was Morgan here? What was he doing in Thea's chamber? My eyes fell back on him. What about you, Morgan? Why are you here? I asked. He drawled, casting a glance at Thea's door down the hallway as if searching for the right words. I also came to talk to her, he finally said. Before I could ask why, he sounded. Killian told me she tried to kill herself, but I think that's another act of hers. I sighed. I think so too. Even Morgan could see right through Thea's deception, then why won't Killian? My brother is looking for you, we should join the celebration, Morgan said, and I nodded. We went back to the party just in time as Killian was about to address the crowd. He was standing at the center of the grand hall and I went over to join him. Killian leaned closer and pecked my lips before starting his speech, thanking everyone for organizing this feast for us. He raised his goblet to make a toast. To the Crescent North Pack, everyone raised their drinks, echoing the words as well. I turned to Killian, smiling. He pulled his drink to his lips, and before he could take a sip, the goblet slipped from his hand, sounding harshly against the floors, silencing all sounds and gaining everyone's attention. To my horror, right before my eyes, Killian fell harshly against the floors, unconscious and his body drained of blood. Killian! Sheila's point of view. Killian! I yelled, watching in shock as Killian crashed against the cold, humid floor. At his fall, the hall broke into chaos. Immediately, everyone rushed to him. I reached for Killian, my hands fell on him and his body was cold. Mason, Alan, Lorenzo, and Morgan were by his side instantly. They hauled him up in their arms and rushed him out of the hall. I followed suit behind them and hastened straight to Killian's chamber. The guys placed him carefully on the bed, and I turned to Alan, requesting the presence of the pack's healer. He told me he had mind-linked her already. My eyes shifted to Lorenzo, and before I could say something, he added quickly. Valerie is on the way as well. The door pushed open and Dr. Maggie and a few of her assistants hurried through the door. What happened to him? She queried, examining Killian's seemingly lifeless body. Absolutely nothing. He was fine a second ago, then suddenly, he collapsed on the floor, Morgan explained to her hurriedly. Maggie began pulling out some things, inspecting Killian's body while I remained unmoving from the bed where I was sitting right next to Killian. Everyone stepped back a little, giving Maggie and her assistants enough space to carry out their work. After a long while, Maggie stepped back, her eyes drifting from Killian to us. What happened to him? Why is he like this? I asked, and Maggie shook her head. His body is out cold, it isn't responding to anything, and I can't seem to reach out to his wolf. This is bad and beyond my control. I think whatever is wrong with Killian has to do with magic. Valerie completed from the door. She was still wearing her blue dress and black cloak from this afternoon when I left her in the attic. She has been tirelessly working on completing the last piece of the spell for the crescent moon rising that was barely 2 weeks away. Yes, I think the Alpha's condition has to do with magic, Maggie added. Valerie moved closer to the bed. She came with a few witches from the quarters, including Gwen. She asked everyone to exit Killian's chamber, but I insisted I remained next to him. After the guys had left, leaving just a few witches, Valerie, Gwen, Lorenzo, and I in the chamber. They began their work. I was only forced to watch them. The past few days, I had progressed with my magic. Lorenzo has been really helpful to me and I could control it, but it was safer if I didn't use my magic yet. Extreme use of my magic appeared like a beacon that would allow anyone to easily locate me, including the dark circle. As much as it hurt me to sit idle and watch, it was for the best. Until I found a way to cloak my magic, I had absolutely no choice. I pulled away from the bed as the witch's chance on Killian's cold body grew stronger. I walked to the end of the wall, leaning on it while running a finger on the black bracelet that was on my wrist, which was meant to restrict my magic. And it had been doing so for days now since Lorenzo placed it on me. But it's not the case anymore. Even with the bracelet on, I could still feel magic immensely, and being a channeler only made my situation worse. I closed my eyes and opened them quickly as soon as the witch's chants stopped. Valerie's eyes met mine, and from her gaze, I could tell whatever was wrong with Killian was really bad. We stepped outside the chamber, leaving Gwen and a few witches with Killian. Morgan, Alan, and Mason were still outside the chamber. They approached Valerie as soon as we all stepped out. "How serious is this, Valerie?" I crossed my arms against my chest in a frenzy. "It's bad. Killian is under a witch's spell. He's been hexed, and because of that, his soul and his wolf have been expelled from his conscious state," Valerie said. "A spell? Whatever spell it is can be broken, we just need a few ingredients and the blood of the witch behind this," Lorenzo filled in. I felt my insides curl. But not because of Lorenzo's words. Even though no one was saying it, everyone knew this had to be the doings of the witch who killed Rowan, and destroying this pack, and Killian too. The witches in my brother's pack are yet to find out anything from the message they received from this cursed witch. Whoever did it, did a good job to cover their tracks. I sighed, jerking back to reality. "We will find another way to break the spell, I promise," Valerie said, and I followed her to her spell room. "I want to perform the spell on Killian." "Yes, we need the blood of the witch who did this to him, but you also know that I can undo whatever it is that is wrong with Killian." Valerie turned to me. Her deep purple eyes were on me. "You doing that is suicidal. That spell will require a lot of your magic. You performing that spell is as good as giving up your identity to the dark circle. Believe me, I know they are just waiting for us to make one wrong move that'll give up your identity and location. Please, Sheila, don't underestimate them. I am not. I know exactly what they are capable of just so they can find me." I paused, remembering what they did to the Crystal Fortress just to learn of my identity. I understood Valerie, but I was not a little girl anymore, and I certainly would not stay idle and watch my mate die when I had the power to save him. "I have a bad feeling about this, Valerie. We should perform this spell on Killian now before his condition becomes worse. There's more to disconnecting Killian from his wolf and consciousness. I can feel it, something far worse is about to happen," I said. "No, Sheila. You will be risking your life, and I will not have that. I promised Leonardo, I will keep you safe. And that's exactly what I will do." Valerie stopped talking as a loud bang sounded from the door. She used her magic to open the door and Alan rushed in panting hard, with blood on his hands. What happened? Valerie moved to his side, while I remained fixed on my position, fear eating me inside. It's Killian. I think the demon has taken over him, Alan said sharply, and Valerie's eyes snapped to me. He attacked the witches and has fled, what? This was precisely what I was talking about. Things had gotten worse. I sent a glance at Valerie before we hurried out of the spell room. Right now, nothing mattered to me. I just had to find Killian, and perform that spell before something far worse happened. We reached Killian's bedroom, and he wasn't there. He had escaped through the window and Lorenzo, Gwen, and a few witches had gone after him, including Morgan, Mason, and the warriors. I raced downstairs, exiting the castle and stepping out into the darkness. There was chaos around. Blood was everywhere, and everyone was fleeing to safety. I sighted Mason helping some injured members. This was Killian's doing. A loud growl shook the earth, and it was Killian's. I began to follow the sound of the growls, along with some warriors and witches. But it was coming from everywhere. I sniffed the air and focused on Killian's scent. I began to follow the trail and it led me deeper into the woods. What was he doing here? I kept following his scent but stopped in my tracks abruptly when the sounds of hushing whispers echoed through the trees. I moved slowly, making as little noise as I could. I stopped behind a tall tree trunk when I heard Killian's deep voice, and his large body was in my view. He wasn't alone, I could smell the stench of something else, or rather someone else. It was dark and deadly. But I couldn't see who it was as Killian's large body was covering whoever it was that stood before him. I moved from the tree, taking silent and cautious steps forward. Then Killian stopped talking, and the whispers of the other person filled the air. I couldn't recognize the voice, it was very unusual. I used my wolf's hearing to pick up what the whispers were about. But the words were in a different language, a witch's chant. I stopped abruptly. It was the witch. The witch we've been searching for. Just then, the whispers halted, and I felt Killian's muscles stiffen. Immediately, he turned his head my way, and my eyes connected with the darkness taking dominance of his soul. And behind him was a woman, dressed in a red cloak. She had her hair covered with the hood of her cloak, and her head was turned the other way. She was a woman all along. I took a step closer, and her unusual voice sounded with a sneer. "Kill her!" she whispered, and Killian's dark eyes hardened, focusing on me. "Sheila's point of view, kill her." The woman's voice sounded, as Killian's large body turned to me. My eyes pulled from the witch to Killian, who was now a few feet away from me. His entire body was smeared with blood. "Killian," I muttered slowly as Killian neared me and his nails extended into claws. "Don't," I whispered when he was only a breath away from me. My eyes connected to Killian's, but there was absolutely nothing there. It was completely dark there. There was no talking to him. Neither his wolf nor Killian's soul was conscious. His body had been taken over by his demon. My eyes moved past him to the witch behind me, who didn't have her face to me. I couldn't see her face, but I could feel the sneer leaving her lips. Then she turned around, moving away, and I couldn't let that happen. This was the first time we'd ever come so close to the witch. I couldn't let her get away. I had to find out exactly who she was. Just then, Killian's claws rose up in the air to attack me, but I jumped out of the way, taking a step back. Killian, snap out of this madness, I took another step back. But there was no talking to him. He was clearly under the witch's spell, again, and she was getting away. I breathed out, shutting my eyes closed. I gave my wolf, 80, partial control of me. My eyes snapped back open, and I could feel her presence rove to the surface. I extended my claws as well. I didn't know if I could win a square fight against Killian, but I was sure that witch wasn't leaving here alive. Killian came for me, and I evaded his path quickly, diving my claws into the side of his stomach. But that could barely weaken. Before I could send another swing at him, his claws lunged at him, but I wasn't fast enough to escape him. I groaned as his sharp claws tore through the side of my arm, and his claws ripped off the black bracelet on my wrist. I watched as it hoped for freedom on the earth. I heard 80 within me. She is getting away. My eyes narrowed on the woman's figure leaving the woods, before shifting from my mate who was charging at me with the intent of killing me. I exhaled calmly, and as soon as Killian was right next to me, I grabbed him firmly and placed my hands on him. My blue eyes bored into the darkness in his eyes. I wanted to break the spell on him, but it would take some time and the witch could get away. I muttered low chants, and immediately, Killian collapsed on the cold earth. I could feel it all. Nature's magic floated from the earth, the calm night air, and the blazing moon. I felt an enormous energy begin to pump in my veins, and my senses became heightened, and I could hear the tiniest and littlest kind of sound. Then I focused on her, and I heard her stop in her tracks. I pulled up from the ground where I had momentarily put Killian to sleep. I turned to my left, and there she was. The witch. She was standing a short distance from me, her eyes were on me. But I couldn't see anything from afar. I tried to focus on her scent, trying to identify it. But it was different. I could tell this witch had cloaked her scent, and almost everything about her, even her voice was faux. I steadied my eyes on her, taking a step closer, but she didn't move. I began to move gently under the glow of the bright moon until I was a few feet away from her. I stopped. My eyes narrowed on her and she released a dark chuckle. Her eyes were completely dark, and she had a cloth covering her face. She raised her hands in the air and her fingers began to dance slowly, while her lips moved against each other. There was this gleam on her face that reflected her hatred, and she lunged at me using her magic. I countered it before it fell on me, attacking her instantly. She blocked it almost quickly, her dark eyes blinked at me, perplexed. "No, this can't be," she muttered more to herself. I created a tornado, sending it violently at her, and she was quick to recover from her thoughts. But she moved slowly. She channeled the earth's magic, redirecting the violent breeze at me, but I countered it. I raised a chunk of the earth's dirt, turning it into a short-length blade, and lunged at her. She evaded my path. Swiftly, I abandoned the blade and sent my sharp claws to her. Luckily, my claws sank into her flesh, tearing it open. She groaned, clutching the side of her stomach as her blood rushed out quickly. Her furious dark eyes were wide with both shock and confusion. "How did you do that?" She counted her words carefully. But I didn't have the time to play these sorts of games with her. I was more focused on getting close to her and unmasking this. She has made both my life and Killian's life a living hell. Without responding to her question, I used my magic on her, but she blocked it instantly. How can it be? You are a witch. She sounded almost in disbelief, frozen on her spot like she was taken aback, and lost in her thoughts again. I couldn't give a care what she thought. I just wanted to see the face of the person behind all of this madness. I grasped the opportunity and I dug my nails into the earth and channeled its energy. In a flash, I was before her. I grabbed her by the neck. I was about to reach for the black cloth concealing her face, but I was pushed harshly away from her. Before I could crash roughly against the rough earth, I found my balance quickly. My piercing blue eyes fell on Killian. His large figure stood between the witch and me, and he still had the intent of killing me. Killian, fight this! I lunged at him, and instead of attacking him, I pulled my hands to his face, cupping it. Killian's body became still immediately. I peered right into the darkness rooted in Killian's eyes, and I began chanting. It didn't take long for my eyes to torch blue, and I could feel myself within the walls of Killian's mind. It was completely dark, and whatever that witch did to him had bound his wolf and awoken this demon within him. I continued chanting, using my magic and the witch's blood in my nails to undo whatever she had done to Killian. I closed my eyes and using my magic, I let my wolf call out to Killian's wolf. This would have been easier if Killian and I had already marked each other. Nonetheless, AD managed to connect with Killian's wolf, and I broke whatever connection the witch had formed with Killian, pulling Riker to the surface. My eyes pulled open and they fell on Killian's golden eyes, which meant his wolf was in control. His rough hold on me softened, as he scanned our surroundings. Thank the goddess, it worked. Find Killian, we need to catch the witch. My words fell as my eyes moved to where the witch was a minute ago, but she had vanished. I could only see the fading blur of her red cloak exiting the woods. She was headed west to the mountain's side. I hastened into the darkness, trailing after her to the mountains, but I couldn't find her. I sniffed the air, trying to locate the witch's scent, but it completely vanished. She had escaped. No. It can't be. This was the first time I was able to see her at a close distance. But she eluded me and I didn't get to unmask her. This was beyond frustrating. I was moving around the darkness in a frenzy, and I had reached a dead end, and what lay a step away was nothing. I had already taken a step further when I felt the sparks from the mate bond form around my arm and waist. Be careful, I heard Killian's loud voice sound behind me, as he pushed me backward, closer to him. I turned to face him. He was back. His eyes now had their normal amber color. Please, be careful, Sheila, he voiced. It's the witch, Killian. I lost her. She was right here and I lost her, I said, running my fingers through my hair. I had her within my grasp, and I lost her. It infuriated me to my bones, more so, because whoever she was, she knows my secret now. This was dangerous. Killian's point of view, no matter how much I tried, I simply just can't believe Alpha Leonardo has no idea where she is. Felix, one of the most annoying members of the council, huffed angrily, almost banging his fist on the round mound in the council's court. Enough, Felix, repeating that over and over again won't change anything, Alpha Philip sauntered to his seat. It's been 4 weeks now since the blood moon appeared abruptly in the night sky, and still, we haven't been able to find her. His voice was utterly dry and he could barely keep his frustration from his eyes. Everyone in the council was equally frustrated, including me, but it was for different reasons. This was the 4th meeting summoned by the council within a week, and the only matter that everyone seemed to be discussing was the white wolf, and each time we seemed to be making no progress at all. It's been 4 weeks since the blood moon appeared in the sky and the news about the white wolf being alive flooded the whole of North Central. The council had immediately formed an army of their best warriors from all supernatural kinds to find the white wolf. Even Zariah and her coven witches had also tried locating her, but the result was the same. She couldn't be found. It's been a while and we can't seem to locate her. Do you think the dark circle has gotten to her already? Daimon asked, and before anyone could respond to him, Amelie's voice filled the court. And no. They haven't, at least not yet, she mumbled in a stutter. She was seated in a corner of the court. This was the first time in weeks she had spoken a word during the meetings. Usually, her gaze was always stuck on the quill pen she held tightly, scribbling on the paper. Whatever she was writing seemed pretty serious. But they were only drawings of some witch symbols. Zariah and the council had seemed to think it was something important, but the witches had no idea what the symbols meant. Tell us, Amelie, how do you know that? Zariah gated to where she was. Amelie's gaze fell on Zariah and the skin around her eyes was worn out and dark. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't been having proper rest. Amelie's lips trembled against each other as if she was trying so hard to say something, but the words wouldn't escape her lips. After seconds of attempting once more, she exhaled exhausted. I can't. Amelie's hands fell on Zariah. We have to protect her. A bad storm is heading our way. The darkness has awoken and it's after her. Every one of us will die. Her whispers invaded the silence that had dominated the court as everyone listened to her words. I could feel the chill that ran down my spine at her words. Suddenly, the fear that had suffocated my chest these past few days intensified. I glanced around the court and I could see similar fear imprinted on almost everyone's faces, including Leonardo's. But something else other than fear was deeply rooted within those electric blue eyes of his. Something I couldn't make out. He must have felt my intense stare on him because his eyes shifted from Amelie and found mine. Our gaze swept over each other. I could see exactly what Felix was yapping about. The white wolf in question, the one both the council and the dark circle were trying to find, was his sister, but he was unbelievably calm with everything that was going on. This was not like him. Knowing Leonardo the way I did, he was capable of doing anything to protect those he loved, and so would I. Just at the thought, I felt a piercing pain in my chest. I groaned, leaning a little on the mound, as I rested my head on my hand. These past few days have been tiresome. I couldn't help feeling anxious. The crescent moon rising was 2 nights away and finally, we would get the chance to break the curse. I should have been happy, but somehow I just wasn't. Instead, my wolf and I felt the exact opposite. It was only a week ago since the witch that had been hounding the pack simply just vanished. We had searched everywhere for her but we couldn't find her. That was another problem as I could not seem to remember anything. Maybe if I did, everything would be much easier. Then I might have known who she was, seeing that she had me under her control with a spell, and almost made me murder my mate. Now that the moon is slowly upon us, I can't help but wonder, what if something happens and I end up harming Sheila, or what if for some reason, the ritual doesn't work and Sheila gets stuck in the curse? The thought alone made my blood turn cold. It didn't take long for the meeting to end quickly, and instantly, I exited the court. I was with only a few warriors, even Valerie couldn't attend today, she had a lot of things to do in preparation for the ritual in 2 nights. I got on my horse and hurried back to my pack. The only thoughts I had were all about Sheila. I just needed her close to me. By the time we reached the pack, it was dusk already. I moved with haste through the castle doors and headed straight for Sheila's chamber. But thankfully, I found her in the hallways, dressed beautifully in her black dress. I reached for her and pulled her into my arms. I wrapped my hands around her and felt her soft body lean into mine. "Killian, are you all right?" she whispered into my ears, while I kept inhaling as much of her scent as I could. "I am fine," I lied flatly, pulling away from her. I led her to my chamber instead, and I fell on the bed. I just needed to spend the evening with her, without worrying about the outcome of the ritual in 2 days, or thinking about the witches or anything else. I just wanted my mate beside me. And it gave me great pleasure when Sheila crawled onto the bed, positioning herself right in my arms. I buried my head in the crook of her neck, while she wrapped her hands around my neck. "Are you going to tell me now what is wrong?" she finally said after a while of silence. "Did something happen at the council?" The tone of her voice was suddenly sharp, and almost fearful. "Nothing happened," I said quickly to calm her racing heart. Sheila pulled a hand to my chest, rubbing it gently. Her soft padded fingers brushed against the inked drawing of a wolf on my chest. They were branded scars from my father, one of the gifts he left me before his death. My voice filled the air and I felt Sheila's hand on my chest halt immediately. I never really answered her questions about the scars before. I didn't want to talk about it, especially when it had to do with my father. But then again, I couldn't deny it. He was the one that got me in this mood. I felt scared. I had carried this curse with him for almost 15 cursed years. It was my father's punishment to me, and in a way, it reminded me of whose son I was. Sheila shifted on the bed, and I was forced to move my gaze to hers. She didn't say a word, but her enigmatic blue eyes were urging me to continue. I leaned closer to her. The stories about him didn't lie. He was that kind of a person. Cruel and brutal. A feral wolf who had run wild and lost his very soul. I paused, feeling the warmth of Sheila's hand on my neck. He was also cruel to his mate, and sons. I could not help but breathe in roughly at my words. They reminded me of myself with Sheila. I had also been cruel to her. I shut my eyes. Nell was right. I was exactly like him. And my fear grew even worse, causing my heart to hammer hard against my chest. Sheila probably sensed it, but she brought my attention back to her. He had murdered his mate, our mother, and forced his sons to watch it all. "And that's exactly what I almost did to you." I watched Sheila's forehead crease. "I almost killed you, Sheila, for the 2nd time. It wasn't your fault. You were under the spell of a witch," she voiced. That doesn't make the pain and rage I feel go away. It doesn't change the fact that you almost died in my hands, just the way my mother died in the hands of my father. Sheila turned on the bed, facing me. Her soft hands were on my face. You are nothing like your father, Killian. It wasn't your fault your mother and brother died, she spoke quickly. Nell was a rotten. He murdered a lot of innocent people and destroyed so many lives, including the Black Blood Pack. You are not like him. You are right, Nell was a asterisk, who didn't even bat an eye before he cursed his sons and his pack. But he wasn't the cause of my brother's death, that was the doing of them, the Black Blood Pack, I told her. I watched the corners of Sheila's eyes shimmer with tears but she looked away from me. How is it their fault, Killian? She turned her eyes back on me with absolutely no emotions playing on her face, but I could feel the silent pain in her words. Your father, Nell Reed, was the one who attacked the Black Blood Pack. He murdered their Luna and stole the daughter. And that was wrong, and they should have gone after him alone. But they didn't. Alpha Logan and his sons raided the pack in search of their missing daughter, and they started a war. A war that led to the deaths of many innocent people, including my brother, Carl. This was the fault of Alpha Logan, and his sons enough, Killian. Sheila yelled, jumping down from the bed. I didn't understand why she was reacting this way to everything that I said. She was both furious and in pain, at the same time, all because of a pack that was an enemy of ours. What, Sheila? Shouldn't you be on my side? I sat upright on the bed, watching her as she paced near the window. This isn't about sides, Killian. It's about what's right and wrong. And what your father did was wrong as well. In one night, Leonardo and Kaiser lost everything. They lost Luna Fiona, Alpha Logan, and their sister. If your father didn't attack, none of this tragedy would have happened, she was screaming. And as every word left her lips it only enraged me she was defending them. Don't take their names out of your lips. Why can't you see exactly what I am saying? I couldn't keep my voice from yelling. And why can't you see that this feud between both packs is so stupid? Both the Crescent North Pack and the Black Blood Pack lost something, Killian. And the man that started this madness is no more, so we should just move on, Sheila yelled back. I could see the pain that was emitting from her. It sent a jolt of pain to my chest and ignited rage as well. What is it about them that make you defend them? I asked. I couldn't understand why she chose to stand with them, because that was exactly what she was doing. Sheila stopped pacing, her round eyes bored intensely at me as I waited for her response, but the words that left her lips only enraged me the more, and I lost it. Killian's point of view. What is it about those that make you defend them? I yelled, my raging amber eyes met hers. Sheila was frozen on the spot. Her eyes were saying so much but I just couldn't understand the pain behind them. As much as I felt furious, I also hated seeing her this way. It was like she had a lot to say, but just couldn't say it, or wouldn't. What was it about those that made her take their sides? She didn't even know them. Or did she? I didn't know. I fought the jealousy that was about to corrupt my thoughts. I didn't want to think that way, there couldn't be anything between Sheila and any of them. But even the first time Kaiser dared to step into my territory, during Sheila's coronation, I could feel there was something between those two. And he did it again when she was framed for attempting to murder Thea and me. He did it again. I shut my eyes in a poor attempt to quell whatever nonsense was going on in my head. My eyes opened and they fell back on Sheila. She was still standing near the window, her arms folded against her chest, and her gaze on me was as intense as mine on her. She still couldn't answer my question. Why can't you tell me? What is it about those blacks that makes you defend them? I wasn't yelling, but I couldn't keep my emotions from my voice. Sheila's silence made my heart pound heavily. Her silence scared me. Could there be something between her and Kaiser? Nothing, Killian, she muttered so low, her voice holding the imprisoned tears she forced away from her eyes. Her response wasn't convincing. Now I was sure there was something more going on. Let's just drop this, she added, looking away to the window. Is there something between you and Kaiser? I didn't know when the words left my lips. If it had sounded first in my head, I wouldn't have allowed it to escape my lips. But it did. Sheila's piercing eyes turned to me. The pain from a second ago had morphed into rage. What is that supposed to mean, Killian? My stupid lips moved again. You know exactly what I mean, Sheila's brows crippled. You are insane. The question is pretty simple, Sheila. It's either a yes, or a no, I said again. I have too much going on right now to deal with this. She started for the door. Quickly, I sprang from the bed and stopped her. Then, just explain everything to me, Sheila. I don't even know what you're thinking. I know there's something you want to say to me, so just say it. Fine, I will say it. Put an end to this blinding hatred and realize that there are far more important things than this your baseless jealousy, she exploded right in my face, before storming out of my chamber. I shut my eyes, crumbling on the bed. I buried my face in my large palms. Sheila's words replayed over and over in my head, and the only thing I could understand was, I lost it and I had messed up. I felt a knife-edge pain in my chest. This was the first time in months we'd had this kind of heated argument and I didn't like it one bit. I hated it more, all because it had to do with the people I hated most. As much as I hated them, I couldn't survive a second without Sheila. She was like a drug I was addicted to. Alan, go through everything again, and Mason, ensure the warriors are ready for tomorrow's night, I managed to say, placing a finger at my temple, desperately wishing the banging ache against my skull vanished in an instant. I turned to Jax, Xavier, Nate, and Caleb, debriefing them on last-minute details before the ritual tomorrow night. I buried my face in my palms. Tomorrow was an important night for my pack and me. It was the crescent moon night and the only opportunity for us to liberate ourselves from the crescent curse. That's all for now, guys, I voiced flatly to everyone, dismissing them. I just wanted to be alone. The warriors left the office, leaving behind just Mason and Alan. I positioned my stare on both of them. I want to be alone, I said with a grunt. Yeah, we can see that, Mason shuffled on his chair, leaning forward. But Alan hadn't said a word to me, his dark brown eyes rested on me intensely. For a second, he reminded me of Morgan. I breathed out in relief. It was a good thing indeed Morgan wasn't around in the castle at the moment. He had journeyed with Lorenzo and a few witches to a coven in the East region. They had gone there regarding the curse and would be back right before the crescent moon rose. Did something happen between you and the Luna? Alan's question shifted my eyes to him. That doesn't concern you. Any of you, I pointed out. Ever since the heated argument yesterday, Sheila and I haven't had a proper conversation yet. She didn't even come down for dinner last night and has locked herself up within the corner walls of the witch's quarters. To put it short, she was still very much angry at me for everything that happened yesterday. Alan leaned forward, wanting to say something when a sharp knock sounded on the door. Our gazes sauntered to the door as it was pushed open gently, and Thea walked in. My eyes zoomed in on her. She looked better than the last time I had seen her, but frankly, she was the last person I wanted to see, especially now when Sheila and I were in a rocky place. What can I do for you, Thea? She leveled her gaze on me, before her brown eyes moved from Alan, and lazily landed on Mason. A small smile stretched her lips, but it wasn't that too deep. It seems you are busy, I will come to see you when you are done, she muttered low, trying to keep her tone calm. But anyone could tell she had something urgent to say. She turned to the door, but I stopped her. You can tell me what you came for, it's fine. She paused, her brown eyes returning to me, before flickering on Alan and Mason. Can we talk in private? Alan's sharp gaze fell on me, and I took a glance at my beta and best friend. Of course, I returned to her. Guys, please excuse us. Mason was up, and reluctantly, Alan followed. Thea remained standing next to the door until both Mason and Alan exited, then her eyes darted to me. She took only a few steps closer to the table, now separating us. My deep amber eyes regarded her for long seconds. She seemed somewhat uncomfortable and conflicted. Maybe it had to do with what she was about to tell me. So, I allowed her to take whatever time she needed to sort herself. But still, after a while, she hadn't spoken a word. Thea, what is it? Finally, I asked her. Her round brown eyes held mine. It's me, Thea, you can tell me anything. I know. But I just don't know how to tell you this. She didn't move from her spot, even when I offered her a seat. Just say it however it is. It's not something you'll like, and honestly, I am not even sure I should tell you this. Her words were starting to worry me. The crescent moon rising was just tomorrow night and I didn't need more headaches. And somehow, I just could tell what she had to say was going to be a problem. You are already here, so you might as well tell me what it is. I didn't even bother keeping my emotions from my voice. I just wanted to hear what she had to say, and send her off, while I thought of a way to get my mate back. It's about your mate. At her words, I heard my insides curl and my body stiffened. Like I said, Killian, I don't know if I should tell you this. I know best how you feel about her, and knowing what I've discovered about her would crush you, Thea. Speak now or get out. I roared, not in rage, but I didn't like the stalling and the manner she carelessly spoke about my mate. Fine, she rushed, moving a few steps forward. Your mate isn't who you think she is, Killian. She's been hiding something from you, and I can't believe you didn't see right through her. Thea placed a hand on the table. Her brown eyes now held tears, and she shut her eyes closed. Sheila has a lover. What? The word flew from my lips without much thought, as Thea's voice echoed in my head, and her words dived through my chest. Yes, she does, and it's no other than your worst enemy. It's Kaiser Black. He is your mate's lover. No. That's a lie. Killian's point of view. Yes, she does, and it's no other than your worst enemy. It's Kaiser Black. He is your mate's lover. I was frozen. My body was completely numb to all emotions. My amber eyes never shifted from Thea, as hers held mine intensely, watching me so closely. It took a second before the words stopped echoing within the corner walls of my head. And it was just then I realized how absurd it was and how stupid it was for me to even accuse my mate of something so stupid, even worse with a black. I knew Sheila too well. Even though I knew there was something she was not telling me, this wasn't it. It couldn't be it. Those words of Thea were nothing but lies. Thea, I called her name, thinking deeply. If it was someone else that had rammed into my office, spilling this utter rubbish, I would have had their heart ripped out the second those words were made about my mate. But it was Thea. The least I could do was let her keep her life. What is it, Killian? She leaned forward, so eager to hear my next words. Her sharp brown eyes gauged me, curiously. Get out of my office, I said, almost in a whisper. My voice was calm. Very calm. What? Thea blinked, taken aback for a second. She retracted her hand that was on my table. I watched her brown irises burn with fury. She took a single step backward. You don't consider my words true, why? Thea, I brushed my hair swiftly with my fingers. I don't have the time nor the strength for this. I was up on my boots. If that's the only thing you came here to say. Good, you've said it, leave now. I was brutally cold. This was the first time I had spoken to her this way. But she left me with no choice. I was doing my hardest not to lash my rage at her. Don't you think you are being cruel, Killian? Thea said, almost in a shaky voice. Her eyes had begun to well up with tears. No. I don't think so. I think you are the one being cruel. Why can't you just leave Sheila alone? I shot back. All I could see was just jealousy. I thought Thea and I were past this. I thought she had finally understood the situation between both of us and had learned to let go. But I was mistaken. It was obvious Thea had barged in here to smear Sheila's name to put a rift between us. You didn't even ask me how I knew this, she started, but I pulled a hand up in the air. Honestly, I do not care. I stalked to the window, feeling the night's cool breeze on my skin. Outside had already been covered with darkness and the moon made little effort to shower its bright rays on the earth. You have so much trust in her, don't you? I heard her mutter behind me. I hope it won't be too late when you find out the many other secrets that she is keeping from you. Believe me, you'll be shocked. Her words forced me to swerve around and regard her. What did she mean by many other secrets? I was dying to know, but I shoved these thoughts away. With what Thea told me now, it only proves anything that escapes her lips could only be more lies. I trusted Sheila with my life, and also, there was no way she could have a lover. I would have known. Just the way she felt the pain of betrayal, I would have felt it too. I closed my eyes, exhaling. Last night, I had lost every ounce of control. I can't believe I had shoved those brutal words in her face. I regretted it so much. My gaze fell back on Thea. You can leave now. And today will be the last time you address your Luna with such disrespect. You know me too well, Thea. The next time, I won't be so forgiving. I returned my eyes to the darkness outside the window. I can't believe we have come to this, Killian. My amber crystals shifted and pierced through the shock in her eyes for a second. But I pulled away, sending my back to her, again. When I didn't respond to her rants, she turned for the door, before stopping abruptly. By the way, I caught them together. You of all people know too that there's something between those two. It makes me wonder if she was kidnapped in the first place, or she was simply tired of her so-called mate that she was willing to escape to your worst enemy's pack. I heard the door slam shut, and the silence around me enveloped me. I was alone with my thoughts. I fought hard to forget Thea's last words to me, but I just couldn't. Something about her words was true. I knew that much. There was certainly something between Sheila and Kaiser. I could feel it. The way she was always ready to defend him, and the manner he regarded her screamed something. No. No. I didn't want to think about it. I was already going insane with all these. These fears were driving me crazy. But that didn't give me the right to cast any doubt on her. Sheila hasn't given me any reason to doubt her, well, unlike me. I guess that was the problem. I didn't deserve her, especially with everything that I had made her go through these last few months. And even though I hated to admit it, I was scared. Scared of losing my mate. Scared that she'll realize she was too good for me. I felt Riker howl in my head, also feeling my fear, frustration, and sadness. He has been quiet these days. The effect of the crescent moon was already affecting him, and tomorrow it'll be far much worse. I needed some fresh air, as well as some sanity. I rushed out of the office, and hastily exited the castle. I stripped and shifted into my gargantuan black wolf, racing into the night's darkness. I took the longest path into the woods and ran for hours until I felt calm and my head clear. Immediately, I started for the witch's quarters where Sheila would be. I had to see her. I had to apologize to her. I raced through the slothful trees and cool breeze. I was almost at the witch's quarters when my paws sank deeper into the earth and I stopped running. The golden eyes of my wolf scanned around the woods. I couldn't see anything, but I could identify the scent of my mate carried by the night's air. She was close by. But what was she doing out here? I sniffed the air, and my head tilted to where her scent seemed to be coming from. I followed the scent in the night's darkness, leading me deeper into the woods. From a far distance, I got a glance at my mate, moving in the darkness. She was on her horse, riding to the northern borders of the pack. It was another route that led out of my pack's territory. I felt my blood rise, and I kicked my paws in motion as she soon faded out of sight. I focused only on her mouth-watering scent, and just as I had guessed, she was taking the route out of the pack. And she seemed to be in a hurry. Where was she going alone at such an hour? I kept trailing her out of the pack, and into the forest. I ensured I placed enough distance between us, so she wouldn't be able to sniff me out. After minutes of riding, she finally halted in a clearing field. She jumped down from her horse and didn't even bother to guide her horse to a tree. Her eyes scanned around and they fell on a particular tree. She began to race towards it. It was only when I moved from my spot, I realized she wasn't alone. There was someone behind the trees. I sauntered closer and the scent of another's hit me hard. I scrunched my nose up in the night's darkness. I knew that scent. My heart began to race hard in my chest, and my eyes followed Sheila until she reached the tree and lunged herself into the arms of someone else. Someone else that wasn't me. She was in the arms of my worst enemy. Kaiser Black. My wolf howled as a foreign pain coursed through my body, forcing me to shift back to my human form. I gasped, unable to fight the merciless pain that had dominated me. I couldn't stop the tears that had risen in my eyes at Sheila's betrayal. My very own mate had betrayed me.